What if I told you that every complaint you make quietly steals your power? Imagine trading your strength for a few seconds of comfort, again and again, until there's nothing left but frustration and stagnation. This isn't just about being positive. It's about reclaiming control, one brutal truth at a time. You can either complain or you can change, but you cannot do both. Every time you open your mouth to complain, you're not venting. You're surrendering. You're handing over your personal power for the fleeting relief of being heard. And that moment of relief, it doesn't fix anything. It doesn't move the needle. It simply delays your progress while life moves forward without you. You stay stuck while the world keeps turning. This isn't another surface-level mindset video. This is a full mental reset. Over the next 40 minutes, we're diving deep into the hidden cost of complaining, how it doesn't just affect your mood, but how it quietly rewires your brain, making negativity your default setting. You'll discover what to do when your inner voice starts turning against you, how to retrain your thoughts, and most importantly, how to escape the cycle. You'll learn exactly how to break the toxic habit of complaining, how to cultivate calm under pressure, and how to shift from victimhood to taking full control of your emotions and decisions. No fluff, no preachy lectures, just raw truth, practical steps, and real transformation. This is the Stoic path, the route to emotional resilience. It's not fantasy or feel-good fluff. It's discipline grounded in truth. And here's one. Nobody cares about your problems more than you do. Harsh? Maybe. But it's also liberating, because if that's true, then it's on you. You stop blaming. You stop waiting. You start doing. The world won't pause for your pity. You have work to do. So if you're ready to break the cycle, if you're tired of spiraling and ready to finally hold yourself accountable, this is your moment. This is where the change begins. Take a deep breath, because it all starts right here. Section 1. Complaining is not a strategy. It's emotional procrastination. Let that sink in. Complaining is not some bold expression of truth. It's a delay, tactic in disguise. You don't need a new excuse. What you need is a mirror. And when you look into that mirror, you need to stop lying to yourself. The truth? Complaining only feels like progress. But it's not. It's a false movement. A trick your mind plays. You rant about your boss, your relationship, your bad luck. But in reality, you're not fixing anything. You're just stalling, escaping, substituting action with emotional noise. Every time you choose to complain, you choose illusion over action. A fake sense of control over real accountability. And deep down, you know it. You can feel it every time you're stuck in that loop. Why does this matter? Because the longer you stay there, the weaker you become. The more you reinforce powerlessness, the harder it gets to climb out. And now it's time to understand exactly how that mental loop is built and how to break free from it. Let's step into that next layer. Together, we just saw how complaining trades real progress for emotional comfort. Now, let's go deeper into what that trade actually costs you. Every time you complain, you're not just venting. You're giving up your ability to act. You're exchanging your personal power for the short-term relief of playing the victim. And in that moment of surrender, something inside you starts to fade. Your discipline, your drive, your inner fire. It doesn't matter how loud your frustration is. The world doesn't reward noise. It rewards clarity. It rewards focused action. It rewards results. Let's make this real with a powerful example. Stephen Hawking was diagnosed with ALS at the age of 21. The doctors gave him just 2 years to live. Imagine hearing that at such a young age. Over time, he lost almost complete control over his body. He couldn't walk. He couldn't talk without the aid of a machine. And yet, he didn't fall into despair. He didn't waste time asking, "Why me?" or yelling at the sky, demanding answers. Instead, he chose a different path. He turned every ounce of his energy inward, focusing his brilliant mind on understanding the universe. While most people today complain about slow Wi-Fi or trivial inconveniences, he was redefining black holes, reconstructing the very nature of space and time. That is power, not loud, not angry, but razor-sharp in focus, stoic, clear, unshaken by chaos. Your situation is rarely the real enemy. It's your response to that situation that makes all the difference. That's what Stoicism teaches. Epictetus said it best. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Complaining is a reaction rooted in weakness. It gives your pain a voice, but at the same time, it robs you of your strength. And here's where it goes. Deeper into your brain. Every word you say becomes a cue to your subconscious. So when you constantly say things like, "This sucks," your brain stops searching for solutions. Why should it? You've already declared defeat, and neuroscience confirms this. Repetitive complaining actually strengthens the neural pathways tied to negativity. The more you do it, the more efficient your brain becomes at spotting problems instead of possibilities. You're essentially training your mind to see the bad in everything. Even when life gives you something good, you expect the worst. You brace for the next storm before the sky even darkens. That's not being realistic. That's building a cage around your potential, brick by brick, word by word. So, what's the shift? Stop ranting, start reflecting. The next time something frustrates you, traffic, rejection, a missed goal, don't explode. Don't unload it onto your partner, your friends, or your coworkers. Instead, pause and ask yourself just one question. What can I control right now? That question is your reset button. That one moment of awareness can pull you out of the loop. It can save you days, months, even years of emotional drain. Start small. Replace the daily complaint with a daily check-in. Every morning before a single word escapes your lips, ask yourself, am I stuck on the problem or am I focused on the next step? And when someone inevitably pushes your buttons, earlier, we talked about replacing complaints with reflection. Now let's take it a step further. How to respond with intention, even when frustration strikes hard. The next time you feel that urge to vent, pause. Go silent for a moment. Ask yourself, is this really worth my mental bandwidth? 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. Because most frustrations don't deserve a voice. They deserve discipline. Don't let noise take up valuable space in your mind. You're not a dumpster for life's minor irritations. You're a builder, a creator. And your energy? It should go into building your focus, your craft, your future, not into breaking yourself down. That requires a different kind of strength. Not the strength to yell or argue, but the strength to stay still, to hold your tongue, to channel that energy into action. And yes, it takes discipline, not the kind shouted from rooftops, but the quiet kind. The kind forged in small moments when you desperately want to complain, but you choose not to. That's where your power compounds. That's where your identity begins to shift. from someone who reacts to someone who responds, from a man who vents to a man who executes with precision. Always remember this. Complaining feels like motion, but it's a lie. It's movement without progress. You spin your wheels, you wear yourself out, but you go nowhere. Bitter, drained, stuck in a loop of your own making while convincing yourself you're processing. You're not. You're just stuck. Results don't come from noise. They come from clarity. They come from choosing to work while others whine. While the average man is complaining about unfairness, the uncommon man is building in silence. So, if you want to rise above mediocrity, here's where you begin. Never open your mouth to complain again. Instead, shift your entire mindset. Replace every complaint with a question. Replace every rant with a response. Your life will begin to change before you even notice it. And when the urge hits, and it will hit, don't speak. Take a breath. Close your mouth. Get back to the work. Because your emotions don't deserve a microphone. Your future deserves your full, undivided focus. And when the temptation creeps in again, ask yourself, what would the man I'm trying to become do right now? Then do that. Do it quietly. Do it with strength. And do it without asking for applause. But here's something most people never think about. The most dangerous complaints are the ones you don't say out loud. So, let's talk about those. What happens when the enemy isn't external noise, but your own silent thoughts? Last time, we exposed the hidden trap of silent complaints, the kind that echo inside, quietly shaping your mindset. Now let's step into the battlefield where those whispers begin. You're in a war zone, but this war isn't fought outside. It's not waged against bosses, partners, or bad luck. It's happening inside your own mind and the enemy. It wears your voice. You know the voice I'm talking about. This isn't fair. Why do they have it easier? I'll never catch a break. It doesn't yell. It doesn't scream. It murmurs. But it does so constantly. All day long, these quiet, corrosive thoughts drip into your consciousness. And the danger? What begins as a fleeting thought eventually hardens into identity. You start living under its spell. You stop seeing new opportunities. You hesitate to take risks. You convince yourself that you're not in control. That's how it happens, not with explosions, but erosion. Not because life defeats you, but because you start believing the small lies you whisper to yourself every single day. And those lies are powerful. They don't destroy you all at once. They paralyze you slowly from the inside out. That's why this topic isn't just important, it's urgent. If you don't seize control of your internal dialogue, it will control you. And no matter how quiet the world is around you, you'll never find peace if your inner world is loud with doubt, fear, and blame. The Stoics knew this well. They taught us that we don't have control over external events, but we do have absolute power over our minds. Accept this truth, and you'll discover strength you didn't know you had. Because here's the truth. The real battlefield isn't out there. It's in here. And if you're not actively leading your inner voice, then you've already surrendered to it. So what exactly is a silent complaint? It's the story you keep replaying in your head. It's every moment you compare your life to someone else's highlight reel. It's every regret you revisit, every doubt you feed, every thought focused on what you can't do instead of what you can. And they're not just thoughts, they're patterns, they're conditioning. Left unchecked, they shape your self-image. They shrink who you believe you are. Take Robin Sharma, author of The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. On the outside, his life looked flawless. He was a top-tier litigation lawyer, successful, admired, and well compensated. But on the inside, he was suffocating, overwhelmed, hollow. It wasn't the pressure of his work that broke him. It was the perfectionism, the non-stop internal voice whispering, "This isn't enough." That voice didn't destroy him in a single day. It chipped away at him until it crushed him. He didn't collapse because the world was unfair. He collapsed because he never challenged his internal script, until one day, he did. He stopped running. He turned inward. And instead of trying to silence that voice, he chose to lead it. And that's your challenge now. You don't need to shut down your thoughts. You need to train them, to notice them, to guide them with intention, to become the commander of your own mind. It starts with awareness. You can't break a pattern you don't see. So, today, start watching. The moment your thoughts begin to spiral, when that inner voice starts humming its doubts, pause. And then, let's talk about what to do in that moment. In the last section, we talked about catching the moment when that inner voice starts to spiral. Now that you've paused, here's what to do next. Don't argue with the voice. Don't try to suppress it or drown it out. That only gives it more power. Instead, ask one simple, piercing question. Is this voice making me stronger or smaller? If it's not pushing you to grow, to act, to rise, then it doesn't deserve your attention. Cut it off, redirect, and then replace it. Build your own internal command. Create a short, sharp power phrase. One sentence. Direct, repeatable. A mental shift trigger you can fire instantly, like a reset button. It doesn't need to sound poetic. It just needs to work. Maybe it's, "I don't complain, I convert." Or, "What's the next move?" Or even, "Stay locked in." This is your internal rally cry, something you can rely on when negativity starts creeping in. It doesn't just silence the doubt. It steers you back to power. But don't stop there. Go deeper. When that negative loop begins, you must reframe the story. If your automatic thought is, "I never catch a break," then flip the script. Every setback sharpens my edge. If you find yourself comparing to others thinking they're so far ahead, shift it to, "My timing is different, my focus is deeper." You're not lying to yourself. You're leading yourself. Just like a soldier trains in peacetime, for the chaos of war, you train your mind now. So when pressure hits, the right response is automatic. Why does this matter so much in Stoic philosophy? Because Stoicism was never about suppressing emotions. It's about controlling them. It's about clarity under fire. A true Stoic doesn't pretend pain doesn't exist. He simply refuses to let pain speak louder than truth. He doesn't cry out about the storm. He charts a course through it. Steady hands, clear mind. And let's be brutally honest. Most men today are emotionally undisciplined. They confuse venting for vulnerability, as if dumping pain equals strength. But real strength isn't in expression, it's in direction. The question isn't, are you feeling pain? It's, what are you doing with it? If you're just spinning in circles, repeating the same complaints inside your head, you're not healing. You're rehearsing weakness over and over again. So here's your mission. For the next 24 hours, catch every silent complaint. Write them down. All of them. Doesn't matter how small. Then, one by one, rewrite each with power. Replace whining with discipline. Replace blame with responsibility. It'll feel unnatural at first, and it should. You're rewiring patterns that have been running unchecked for years, but keep at it. Soon, it becomes instinct. Faster, sharper, natural. That's the turning point. That's when you stop being at war with your own thoughts and start commanding your mind like a trained weapon. But before we go further, remember this. Don't confuse external silence with inner peace. Plenty of men look calm on the outside, while burning up inside. So what does it take to master the quiet conversation within? Let's break it down. Previously, we uncovered the difference between outer silence and true inner mastery. Now it's time to dive into the battlefield where the real fight is won, inside your patterns, inside your triggers, because this is where the real war is fought, and either won or lost. Most people think those who stay calm under pressure are just naturally lucky. But that's a myth. The men who don't constantly complain aren't born that way. They're trained. They've faced their inner chaos. They've accepted one brutal truth that most people avoid. You're not angry at life. You're reacting to unresolved patterns within yourself. That wave of frustration when someone cuts you off in traffic. That sting of anger when your partner says the wrong thing. That boiling feeling when things don't go your way. It's not about them. It's about you, more precisely. It's about the unhealed part of you that just got triggered. Here's the harsh twist. If you don't locate and defuse that trigger, you'll keep pulling it again and again on yourself. And then you'll blame the world for the explosions. That's why identifying your emotional triggers isn't optional. It's essential. You can't fix what you refuse to face. And you can't change what you don't fully understand. Most men today are walking around like loaded weapons, full of buried frustration, hidden shame, and unresolved fears. The smallest inconvenience can light the fuse, not because life is unfair, but because no one taught them how to trace their pain back to its origin. And that's where Stoic philosophy becomes painfully relevant. Musonius Rufus, a lesser-known but deeply influential Roman teacher, didn't allow his students to blame external chaos. Instead, he challenged them to investigate the root of their reactions. Every time you feel anger, jealousy, or resentment, he urged them to pause and ask, what wound inside me just got touched? That's the work. That's where the reset begins, not by suppressing the emotion, but by understanding it, by listening to it, by leading yourself through it. And this wisdom isn't just ancient. Dr. Gabor Mate, one of the world's leading voices on trauma and addiction, echoes the exact same truth. Every negative behavior, he says, is not weakness. It's an adaptation to pain. Your trigger is not something to be ashamed of. It's not a flaw. It's a signal, a message. And if you ignore it, if you brush it off by complaining, exploding, or numbing out, then you've chosen emotional blindness over personal responsibility. You're not putting out the fire. You're just closing your eyes and pretending the smoke isn't rising. So let's bring this into the real world. It's time to get brutally practical. What are your triggers? In the last part, we uncovered how your triggers aren't random. They're messages. Now it's time to dig even deeper, to see where those triggers were born. For some men, the trigger is that sharp sting of being ignored because they were overlooked or dismissed as children. For others, it's the panic of losing control because they grew up in chaos and uncertainty. And for many, it's the fear of failure because their self-worth was tied to performance. They were only praised when they succeeded, only loved when they won. But hear this clearly. None of that makes you broken. It makes you human. It makes you layered, complex, and real. But if you don't own those layers, if you don't understand them and work with them, then they own you. They shape your reactions. They fuel your complaints. They keep you stuck in emotional autopilot. Let's bring this back to your everyday frustrations. You're not actually complaining because your boss gave you a hard time. You're complaining because deep down you feel undervalued and you haven't learned how to validate yourself yet. You're not upset because someone canceled plans. You're upset because your sense of self-worth is still chained to how others treat you. You're not angry because you failed. You're angry because you've convinced yourself that failure defines you instead of refines you. And that's where most men get trapped. They try to crush their triggers with brute force. They use discipline like a hammer, hoping to smash their emotional reactions into silence. But that's not real strength. That's suppression. That's pressure without clarity. Power isn't about denying the trigger. It's about recognizing it, feeling the heat rise, and choosing to stay calm anyway. That's when you shift from reacting to responding, from spiraling to breathing. This is what Stoicism trains you for. Not to be numb, but to be clear-headed under fire. And it starts with a single question. Is this reaction about what's happening now? Or something older I haven't healed? So how do you take back control? How do you begin rewiring the habit of complaining at its roots? Here's a 4-step reset. Step 1, track the pattern. Choose just one recurring complaint in your life. Trace it. When does it show up? What triggers it? What thoughts immediately follow? Don't judge yourself, just observe and write it down. Step 2, name the emotion underneath. It's never just annoyed. Is it rejection, shame, fear, helplessness? Precision gives you power. Clarity begins the moment you get specific. Step 3, dig for the root. Ask yourself, where have I felt this before? Go back. Follow the trail. Find the first wound that taught you this response. Step 4, create a pattern, interrupt. Design a small, simple move to break the loop, a phrase, a breath, a physical shift, something that tells your brain, we don't spiral here anymore. It's not glamorous, you won't go viral for it, but it will change your life. And here's the truth. Once you start doing this, you'll start seeing it everywhere. You'll begin to recognize how many people are driven entirely by their triggers. Once you start noticing how others are ruled by their triggers, something inside you changes. You stop taking their reactions personally. You don't flinch when someone lashes out. You don't shrink when tension fills a room. Instead, you remain steady, not because you think you're better, but because now you're clear. Because here's the truth. The man who understands his triggers controls his mind. And the man who controls his mind doesn't need to complain. He just gets to work. Let's move to the next critical piece. Pattern interrupts. This is where you regain your power. You don't need another motivational video. You don't need louder music or another energy boost. What you need is a system, a practiced method to cut through the chaos before it takes over. Because real strength doesn't show up in bursts of hype. It shows up in the quiet moment when everything inside you wants to scream, and you pause. Instead, be honest with yourself. When was the last time losing your temper ever actually solved anything? When has venting, yelling, slamming doors, or even stewing in silent resentment ever moved your life forward? You already know the answer. It hasn't, and yet you still let it happen. Why? Because you don't have a reset mechanism. Without one, you'll always default to reaction. You'll always get pulled into the loop. This is why pattern interrupts are so important. They aren't abstract philosophy to sit on a shelf. They're practical, tactical tools. Mental warfare for the battlefield of daily life. A pattern interrupts is a trained response. It's a purposeful disruption of your emotional default. You feel the heat rising. You feel the urge to spiral, whether it's through blame, complaining, snapping, shutting down, or playing the victim. But instead of falling back into that old story, you break the loop, you cut the script, you take back control. This concept isn't new. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, a general commanding legions and a Stoic through and through, kept a journal. But it wasn't for poetry. It wasn't for pretty words. It was protocol. He used it like a blade, a mental weapon, to sharpen his thoughts. Inside he'd write, "Stop, observe, return to reason." That wasn't decoration, that was instruction. Because he understood something most people miss. 1 second of clarity in the middle of emotion can change everything. A decision, a day, a war. If the most powerful man in the ancient world needed a reset button, so do you. So, how do you build your own? It starts with recognition. Most men never get there. They're too busy reacting, too wrapped up in the moment to even realize they're caught in a loop. But once you can see that loop clearly, once you know the exact sequence that leads you into emotional sabotage, that's where the real change begins. Previously, we explored the power of pattern interrupts, how a single conscious pause can disrupt the emotional spiral. Now let's break down exactly how that spiral works and how to rewire it for good. Every reaction follows a script. Once you see it clearly, you can start rewriting it. Let's say traffic makes you snap. You know the cycle. It's been a long day, you're tired, and the moment someone cuts you off, your blood pressure spikes. Suddenly, you're gripping the wheel like a vice, muttering curses under your breath, and your whole mood tanks. Or maybe it's subtler. A passive-aggressive comment from your partner lands wrong. You don't yell, you don't argue, you shut down, go cold. But inside, that resentment festers. The silence grows louder. The distance widens. Sound familiar? It happens the same way every time. And as long as you let that script run unchanged, the outcome will always be the same. That's exactly what pattern interrupts are designed to break. Tool number 1, the power phrase. Short, sharp, yours. It could be pause. Don't play the old game. Calm is my edge. We don't go backward here. The phrase itself doesn't matter as long as it hits you hard. It needs to feel like a punch to the chest. It needs to jolt you awake. The second you say it, the spiral breaks. You interrupt the loop and rewire the moment. Tool number 2, move your body. Your physiology shapes your psychology. When the internal storm starts brewing, change your state. Stand up, walk out of the room, clench and release your fists. Splash cold water on your face. Stretch, move, shift. This isn't just self-help fluff, it's neuroscience. It's a chemical reset. You're disrupting the cortisol surge, the stress cocktail racing through your bloodstream, and sending a signal to your nervous system. We're not doing this today. Tool number 3, control your breath, but not to find. Peace, to take command. A single steady breath can change your state faster than thought. Breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4, out for 4. This simple triangle of control lowers stress hormones, sharpens your mind, and gives you back your grip on the moment. You want to reclaim your mind? Start by mastering your breath, because that's what separates the man who ruins a relationship in one reckless moment from the one who holds the line with strength. And here's the beautiful part. With time, these pattern interrupts won't feel forced. They'll feel natural. They'll shift from effort to instinct. Why? Because the brain builds what you repeat. Just like training your muscles, you develop mental discipline through reps, resistance, and recovery. This is what real strength looks like. Not yelling into a mirror, not bottling up rage until it explodes, but calmly, quietly choosing response over reaction again and again until it becomes your nature. And yes, it's hard, especially in the beginning. You'll forget, you'll fail, you'll slip back into old patterns. But if you care about the man you're becoming, you'll keep coming back again and again, because every time you stop that old loop, even just once you chip away at it, you weaken its hold. You remind yourself that you are not your impulse, you are your choice. And that shift, it's the beginning of something bigger. Previously, we talked about interrupting old emotional loops and choosing response over reaction. Now let's look at what that decision really builds. A man who commands his mind even when the world tries to shake him. Imagine this. What if your worst moments, disrespect, chaos, rejection, didn't hijack your mood? What if you could walk through setbacks and stay sharp, unshaken, effective? That's what happens when you install a pattern. Interrupt. You stop being a puppet, yanked around by emotion, and you start becoming a commander, a man who gives orders to his own nervous system. That's power. Because let's be honest, the world doesn't need more tough guys who just yell louder than everyone else. It needs men who lead themselves, men who stay grounded when others lose it, men who pause when the pressure builds instead of exploding. That's not weakness. That's precision. That's control. That's danger in its most disciplined form. And it starts with a moment. The next moment, something pisses you off. What will you do? Will you snap like always? Or will you stop, speak your power phrase, take a breath, and rewrite the script? Because here's the golden truth. The man who controls the pause controls the outcome. Every single time. Now, let's shift the lens. It's not just about your own peace. It's about how your energy affects others, especially in your relationships. Complaining is contagious. Negativity doesn't need volume to spread. It doesn't require shouting. Sometimes all it takes is a heavy sigh, a side-eye glance, or a passive-aggressive joke. And suddenly, the atmosphere changes. The air tightens. Energy drops. You've seen it before, haven't you? One unresolved emotion poisons the tone of the whole room. People pick up on it. They mirror it. They feed it. Momentum dies. Trust fades. Progress stalls. But here's the difference. The man who refuses to mirror chaos. The one who doesn't take the bait. He doesn't just survive the storm. He shapes it. His calm speaks louder than anyone else's complaints ever could. He doesn't need to raise his voice. He doesn't need to explain himself. You feel him walk into a room. He's steady, not because life is easy, but because he refuses to let noise control his inner rhythm. That's the man people trust. That's the man others follow. And that quiet stillness, that grounded presence, it's not luck, it's built. We just explored the quiet strength of grounded men. Their presence speaks louder than words. But here's what most people miss. Your energy is never neutral. You're always doing one of two things. You're either lifting the room or weighing it down. You're either giving others permission to stay composed and focused, or you're giving them a reason to spiral with you. Most men who complain think they're just letting it out, as if venting is harmless. But what they don't realize is that every sigh, every sarcastic comment, every eye roll, they're not relieving pressure. They're leaking instability into the space around them. And over time, that energy pollutes the environment. It fractures trust. It weakens the very relationships they rely on. This is why so many smart, talented, highly capable men never become leaders. It's not because they lack skill. It's because they carry the emotional weight of someone who's constantly under siege. They walk into rooms heavy. They project pressure instead of purpose. They lead with frustration, not focus, and no one follows that. People may nod, they may smile, but internally, they're backing away, slowly, quietly. Seneca didn't sugarcoat it when he wrote, "The wise man looks for solutions. The fool looks for someone to blame." He wasn't being poetic, he was being direct, because the habit of deflection, of always pointing at what's wrong, always blaming someone else, that's not strength, that's noise. And noise doesn't build trust. It doesn't earn respect. Responsibility does. Let's bring this closer to home. Picture yourself at work. You're in a meeting. One guy always finds a way to complain about the schedule, the client, the leadership. Sometimes it's subtle. A sigh, a muttered comment, a joke at someone else's expense. But it builds. Over time, people stop including him in real decisions. He's no longer the man they count on. He's the one they tolerate, the one they have to manage emotionally. Why? Because he's shown everyone that his emotions lead him, not the mission, not the solution, and definitely not the team. Now picture you're home. You walk in after a long day. You're tired, stressed, on edge. You're not yelling, but you're radiating tension. Your voice is short. Your face is stiff. You move like the weight of the day is dragging behind you. You think you're holding it in, but you're not. That energy seeps into the walls. Your partner feels it. Your kids feel it. The warmth thins out. The mood drops. The connection breaks. And you're left wondering what went wrong. You tell yourself, I didn't say anything, but you didn't need to. Your energy spoke for you. So how do you change that? In the last section, we saw how your energy speaks before you ever say a word, and how it either uplifts or drains those around you. Now imagine flipping that completely. Picture this. You're not the man who enters a room and makes it heavier. You're the one who brings clarity, the one who calms the chaos just by being present. You walk into the room and it grounds. Your voice stays steady when tension rises. You listen first. You speak with purpose. You don't flinch when others spiral. That's not weakness. That's not passivity. That's trained emotional control. That's leadership you don't need to announce, because people feel it. And when the storm hits, people don't look for more noise. They look for the anchor. So how do you become that kind of man? One word, gratitude. Not the fluffy kind, not the fake it till you make it kind, but tactical, disciplined gratitude. It's a practice that shifts your brain from scanning for offense to seeking opportunity. It rewires your mindset from complaint mode to solution mode. Start simple. Every morning, write down 3 specific things that are working in your life. not vague affirmations, specific wins. They can be small. I showed up on time. I kept my cool in traffic. I followed through on what I said I'd do. This isn't just positive thinking. This is mental armor. It protects your attention. It builds momentum. It trains your mind to notice progress, not just problems. And with time, it changes what your brain filters for. You begin to see potential instead of problems. You notice people's efforts instead of their flaws. You become the kind of man others trust and want around, not out of obligation, but out of instinct. So here's the question. What's the energy you carry into the room? Do people feel more focused after talking to you or more drained? Are you the weight or the anchor? Because whether you realize it or not, your presence has a price. Someone is always paying for your negativity or benefiting from your strength. And the truth, you get to choose which one it is every single day. Now, let's go deeper. To truly become unshakable, you can't just feel better. You need to move towards something that matters. In the last section, we uncovered a hard truth. If your goal lacks meaning, no amount of motivation can carry you. Now let's break down why that's such a critical turning point. A goal without meaning is like a compass with no needle. You might be moving, but you're still lost. You're grinding, pushing, staying busy, but there's no fuel in the tank. Eventually, willpower runs dry, because willpower was never meant to replace purpose. Purpose is what carries you when everything else gives out. It's what gives your actions weight. It gives your chaos structure. It gives your pain a direction. This is where Simon Sinek's message in Start With Why hits you right in the chest. He says people don't burn out because they work too hard. They burn out because they forget why they're working in the first place. The problem isn't overexertion, it's disconnection. You're not exhausted because of the hours. You're exhausted because you don't see the point anymore. No clarity, no vision, just motion. So, what happens? You hustle through the day, check off tasks, push harder, but when results don't come quickly, frustration builds. You start blaming the market, your upbringing, the algorithm, the weather, everything except the real issue. You don't actually know where you're going, and that's exactly why Epictetus warned. If you don't know where you're going, every wind is against you. When your life lacks a clear why, everything feels like resistance. Every delay feels like failure. Every obstacle feels like proof you're not good enough. That's the slippery slope. That's when the complaining starts, and it spreads fast. From frustration to doubt to defeat. But when your goal is clear, when it's deeply meaningful, everything changes. You don't just get out of bed. You rise. You don't just react to the day. You move with intention. Obstacles don't break you. They sharpen you. Now, when life punches you in the mouth, you don't complain. You adjust. Because you're no longer working aimlessly. You're working towards something real. So let's bring this down to the ground level. Ask yourself right now, what's your current goal? Is it vague? Is it something you copied from someone else? Is it driven by ego or fear or guilt? Then let's be honest, it's not real, and it's not strong enough to hold you when pressure hits. And it will hit. That's why your goal needs to be defined not just by numbers or vanity, but by purpose. Not, I want a six-pack, but I want to respect my body like I respect my word. Not, I want more money, but I want to create real freedom for my future family. Not, I want to build a business, but I want to live on my terms, and that's where the shift begins. In the last section, we explored how meaningful goals aren't built on ego, but on purpose. And when your purpose is real, it changes everything. Now let's look at how that clarity reshapes the way you show up, because when your why is clear, honest, specific, and aligned with your core values, something inside you shifts. Complaining? It doesn't feel like release anymore. It feels like betrayal. You no longer want to waste energy on negativity. Why? Because now every ounce of focus counts. You're not chasing applause or attention. You're chasing alignment with who you are and what you're here to build. So how do you get to that kind of clarity? Start here. Write down your top 3 goals, and under each one, write why it matters. Not the surface level reason. Go deeper. If your answer is vague, dig further. If your reason is all about proving someone else wrong, keep going. You'll know you're close when the reason stirs something emotional in you. When it hits something real, that's when the shift happens. Next, every Sunday, check in with yourself. Ask, what did I move forward this week? What did I avoid? What frustrated me and why? What needs to change? This isn't busy work. This is self-leadership. Track your mission like a soldier tracks his position, with precision and 0 excuses. Because here's the hard truth. In the absence of a clear mission, comfort will always win. And comfort leads straight back to the same cycle. Complaining, blaming, quitting. You say, I'm tired. It's unfair. Nothing ever works out. But deep down, if you're honest, that's not life failing you. That's you refusing to take ownership of your direction. So define your path, own it, and let your purpose burn through every excuse you've ever used to stay stuck. Because once you know exactly what you're here to build and why it matters, you stop complaining and you start commanding, you stop doubting, and you start doing. That's the line between a man who moves with noise and one who moves with power. Now, let's take that power even further, because if you want to maintain this momentum, you need one more critical habit. The habit that rewires your brain and protects your focus. Previously, we explored how purposeful goals silence excuses and turn motion into meaning. But to sustain that purpose day after day, especially under pressure, you need a tool that keeps your mind aligned before it drifts. That tool is gratitude, because here's the truth most men overlook. Your attention shapes your reality, and what you choose to focus on either builds you or breaks you. But the problem isn't that men lack attention, it's that they've never trained it. You wake up and your mind immediately zeroes in on what you don't have: time, money, recognition, progress. And just like that, your brain starts filtering the entire day through that lens. You open your phone and scroll through highlight reels, others succeeding, smiling, winning. But instead of feeling inspired, you feel behind. You look at your partner, not with connection, but with criticism. You walk into work already tense, already bitter, already drained, and no one's even said a word to you yet. Why? Not because life is broken, but because your lens is. This is where Stoic gratitude becomes a weapon. Not a feel-good ritual, not some soft mantra of blind optimism, but a mental discipline, a strategic reset, a deliberate choice to redirect your attention toward power, not lack. Because the man who can control what he focuses on, especially in chaos, controls his state, his emotions, his energy, his outcomes. The Stoics knew this long before neuroscience confirmed it. They didn't teach gratitude as passive acceptance. They taught it as resistance to entitlement. Marcus Aurelius didn't write about perfect days. He wrote about illness, betrayal, exhaustion, and even then he reminded himself daily to be grateful. Why? Because he understood how the mind works. Left unchecked, the brain will drift toward bitterness. And bitterness clouds judgment. Gratitude clears it. Modern science now backs him up. Daily gratitude, when practiced intentionally, activates the brain's reward circuitry. It boosts dopamine and serotonin. It lowers cortisol. It even strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for willpower, long-term vision, and emotional regulation. In other words, gratitude isn't about feeling better, it's about becoming better. And that choice? You don't make it when life is perfect. You make it especially when life isn't, when things suck, when you're tired, when the results aren't showing up yet. That's when most men give into complaint, resentment, or collapse. But that's the moment where your power begins. That's when you choose differently. Because when your environment gives you every reason to spiral, and you choose stillness, when you choose stillness in the middle of the storm, when you choose gratitude over complaint, you've just proven who's in charge. You. Now let's get practical about how to build that mental control daily. Forget the vague autopilot lists like, I'm thankful for my health, or I'm grateful for food. That's not real reflection. That's noise disguised as growth. Instead, your weapon is specificity. At the end of each day, write down 3 specific things you're grateful for and why they matter. Don't just write, I'm grateful for my friend. Write, I'm grateful Jason texted me today when I was in a bad headspace. It reminded me that I'm not alone. Don't just say, I'm grateful for my job. Write, I'm grateful I handled that client crisis without snapping. It showed I've grown more than I realized. That difference, those extra few seconds of depth, rewires your brain. You begin to build mental muscle. You train your focus to stop defaulting to what's wrong and start seeing what's real, what's working, what's true. And that shift, that's rare, because the truth is, most men never do this work. Why? Because frustration feels powerful. Anger is easy to reach for. It gives you a surge, a spike, a sense of momentum, but what most never realize is that complaining might feel like fuel, but it's only taking you one direction, toward burnout, not breakthrough. Gratitude, when done right, gives you momentum, without pressure, power without the noise, clarity without chaos, focus without fear. So the next time you catch yourself about to spiral, pause, don't numb it, don't rant. Just ask yourself one powerful question. What is still working in my life that I've been too blind to see? Then write it down. Lock it in. Use it as ammo against the negativity your brain wants to lean on. Because here's the real danger of complaining. It doesn't just sap your energy. It conditions your brain to treat negativity like it's normal. And the fastest way to disrupt that pattern isn't through denial. It's through discipline, through deliberate, consistent, specific gratitude, backed by action. You don't need a perfect life to feel strong. You need perspective. And the man who builds that perspective, day by day, even when life feels heavy, becomes unshakable. So don't wait for peace to find you. Build it with your focus, with your attention, with the way you train your mind to see strength even in the pain. Gratitude isn't just a feeling, it's a skill, a daily system. And if you practice it with intention, it becomes your edge. Now let's go further. Because the moment you stop running from discomfort and start embracing challenges, that's where everything changes. In the previous section, we explored how gratitude becomes your edge, how training your focus builds peace even in chaos. Now let's step into the next layer of true strength, embracing challenge through a growth mindset. A man with a growth mindset doesn't see hardship as punishment. He sees it as a gym, not a prison. He doesn't get trapped inside failure. He trains inside it. While others crack, crumble, and complain, he studies the pressure. He leans into the resistance, and he asks the only question that truly matters. What is this building in me? That question, simple but powerful, is the dividing line between those who rise and those who rot. It's not the obstacle, it's the lens. And if your automatic response to adversity is to spiral, vent, or escape, it's not life holding you back, it's your mindset. The man with a fixed mindset says, "This shouldn't be happening." The man with a growth mindset says, "Good, let's go." That internal shift, it changes everything because challenges aren't optional. They don't show up when it's convenient. They don't ask for permission. They will come, uninvited, relentless, and often at the worst times. But how you interpret those challenges, that's where your power lies. You can see adversity as unfair, overwhelming, and personal. Or you can see it as necessary, as training, as custom-built resistance for your next evolution. And when you adopt that mindset, something strange happens. Complaining starts to feel childish. You stop wishing it were easier. You start using failure as fuel. This is where Stoicism hits hardest, not as a quote to post online, but as a way to live under pressure. The ancient Stoics didn't pray for comfort. They didn't ask for fewer battles. They trained for composure in the fire, not by avoiding pain, but by embracing it as a teacher, a mirror, a forge. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." He didn't write that because it sounded poetic on parchment. He wrote it because he lived it while leading a crumbling empire, enduring betrayal, burying his own children. He didn't escape the hardship. He used it. And today, most modern men haven't even stepped onto that same battlefield. They crumble in traffic. They spiral at a deadline. They panic when a plan shifts, not because they're weak, but because they've never been trained. They've never reframed adversity as something useful, and that mindset, "This shouldn't be happening to me," is what keeps men stuck in the cycle of complaining, blaming, and quitting. But here's what the growth-minded man does differently. He doesn't expect ease. He expects adaptation. When the plan collapses, he doesn't lose his fire. He sharpens it. He studies the pattern, extracts the lesson. And then, in the last section, we saw how the growth-minded man doesn't collapse when life shifts. He sharpens. Now, let's go deeper into how he does it, how he turns disruption into discipline. Because for that kind of man, every failure becomes feedback. Every delay becomes a rep. Every punch from life becomes part of the program. Let's get tactical. When something hits you, a rejection, a failure, a breakdown, you don't react on impulse. You don't vent. You don't run. You pause. And in that pause, You ask yourself 3 questions. What is this trying to teach me? What's still within my control? How can I move forward, even by 1 inch? That's your personal framework. Reframe, respond, reflect. This is how you stay in motion without letting your emotions lead the mission. Real men, men of clarity, direction, and discipline. They don't avoid challenges. They seek them, not because they're masochists, but because they know growth never comes from comfort. If you're not being stretched, you're not being shaped. Think of any man you respect, whether in business, leadership, sport, or history, and you'll always find the same pattern. A challenge appears, a mindset is tested, a strength is revealed. There is no shortcut. Take Jocko Willink, former Navy SEAL commander, master of discipline, calm under fire. The man doesn't flinch. Why? Because he doesn't view obstacles as setbacks. He views them as assignments, as opportunities to lead. What's his favorite word? Good. Missed the deadline? Good. Now you have more time to plan. Lost the deal? Good. Now you improve your pitch. Break up? Good. Time to rebuild stronger. That's not toxic positivity. That's trained clarity. It's a mental discipline built to wage war against victimhood. So you want to stop complaining? Then stop expecting life to make sense before you move. Stop waiting for things to be fair, or easy, or smooth. Get clear on this. It's supposed to be hard. The pressure you feel, it's not punishment. It's your invitation to evolve. And once you see that clearly, complaining becomes irrelevant. Because you're no longer asking, why me? You're asking, what's next? So the next time life punches you in the mouth, don't flinch, don't rant, don't retreat. Do what warriors do. Get still, get clear, keep moving, calm, focused, and on fire. Because you weren't built for comfort. You were built to endure, adapt, and lead. And when others break down around you, you'll be the one who holds the line. In the last section, we uncovered how true strength comes not from ease, but from facing resistance with clarity and calm. Now, let's bring it all together, because this isn't about theory, it's about how you train. It's not that life is easier for the strong, it's that they train differently. You didn't see pain as punishment. You saw it as part of the process. You didn't view delays as signs to quit. You saw them as redirection, refinement. You looked every challenge in the eye, called it your arena, and chose, again and again, to stay in the fight. You see it now, don't you? The man with a growth mindset doesn't waste time complaining. He's too focused on turning failure into fuel. Because in the end, what separates the man who rises from the one who breaks isn't talent. It's not luck. It's not status. It's mindset, trained, daily. It's the inner muscle of discipline, emotional control, and purpose. What you've just heard wasn't a motivational speech. It was a strategy, a tactical breakdown. This is your blueprint for the man who's tired of waiting, tired of whining, and ready to build a life he actually respects. Let's recap what we've covered. You now understand that complaining isn't just background noise. It's a habit that rewires your brain for weakness. We've uncovered the hidden emotional triggers, the silent spirals, the reactions you didn't even know were holding you back. We've seen how pattern interrupts can break cycles, how gratitude, when practiced with precision, transforms pain into progress, and how purpose gives your effort direction, so you don't just move, you advance. Most importantly, you now know this. Growth doesn't come from comfort. It comes from confronting challenge deliberately, consistently, calmly. The Stoics weren't just thinkers. They were warriors of the mind. They didn't theorize resilience. They lived it. Now it's your turn. Don't wait. Start today. Pick one complaint, one trigger, one habit you usually ignore, and turn it into training. Pause. Speak your power phrase. Write your gratitude. Reclaim your direction. These aren't abstract ideas. They're actions, and they will rewire the way you see life and the way life responds to you. And if this message struck a chord with you, take a moment to reflect. Share where you've been, what you've struggled with, what you're choosing to change, because you never know who might find strength through your honesty. Every day you delay this work, you reinforce the excuses that hold you back. But every single time you choose discipline, even in a small moment, you prove to yourself and to the world, you are not your excuses. You are your focus. You are your discipline. Now, let's build that life. One clear thought, one controlled breath, and one deliberate action at a time.